22 years ago, there was a genocide that took place, killing at least 1 million people, and some say it might have been closer to 2 million. Today I'm going to inform you of the Rwanda Genocide of 1994, and is often considered the Rwandan Civil War. I'll talk about the events that led up to the Rwandan Genocide, the events that took place during the Rwandan Genocide, and also the aftermath of the genocide. Rwanda is located in Africa. It's just below Ecuador, if you know where that is, probably not. Rwanda is considered one of the smallest countries on the African mainland, consisting of the Hutus, Tutsis, and the Twa. The Twa were the mainlands, the ones who were there first, but it's debated who was there first between the Hutus and the Tutsis. 85% of the Rwanda population was considered Hutu, ultimately giving them an upper hand. The Hutu were kind of in control of all the political and military forces that were going on there, leaving the Tutsis kind of alone, which made them create the RPF, which was the Rwandan Political Front. They did this in order to try to gain some political control. This is one of the events that led up to the genocide because they invaded the capital of Rwanda and took a gunfire to try to gain some kind of political control. And this was actually going to work. They were going to have a shared power government, but the Hutu extremists would not allow that. So they started taking forces up against the Tutsis. On April 6th of 1994, there was a plane that had the president in it, and it was shot down, which ultimately started the genocide. The next day, military forces of the Hutu took up force and began to slaughter people, basically. They killed children and basically any Tutsi neighbor they had. Those were the events that led up to the genocide. Now I'm going to inform you of the events that took place during the genocide. There was Tutsi refugees of families that were already followed during an earlier Hutu wave of violence, and that's who the RPF consisted of. The invasion that they had in 1993 also created a ceasefire. Hutu military and political leaders recruited and pressured the Hutus to take up the force against any Tutsi neighbor that they had. They told them to arm themselves with machete, clubs, any blunt objects, any weapon at all that could help them rape and murder and eventually kill and take up any property or anything of the Tutsis that were anywhere near them. If they were neighbors, if they were employees, if they were children, it really didn't matter who they were. They had no morals whatsoever going on. On April 9th of 1994, there was a masquerade of children at a Polish church. And there was also Rwandan employees who were executed that day in front of all of their colleagues. It was just a big day in the genocide history. It was only 2 days after the whole genocide had started, but there was also almost 100,000 people that were murdered just on that day alone. The RPF attacked the National Parliamental Building when killing did not stop to take up any kind of power that they had. They set up routes to cut off any of the supplies that the Hutus had going, which this eventually led to their victory. They continued to take territory and rescue any citizens that they could find. The RPF finally defeated the Hutu government on July 4th. And on July 18th, they officially ended the genocide by taking the rest of the Northwest Territory. Those were the events that took place during the Rwandan Genocide of December of 1994. Now I will talk about the aftermath of the genocide. Following the RPF victory, 2 million Hutus tried to go to a refuge camp, and by the late 1996, they were planning a cross-border incursion, but the RPF launched a counter-offense. The economy suffered greatly from the genocide, leaving buildings uninhabitable, and about 40% of the population had either been killed or they had fled the country. The RPF commander, Paul Kagame, called a Liberation Day for Rwanda, marked on July 4th, and is now a public holiday. So we're not the only people who celebrate our freedom on July 4th. I believe that the RPF was trying to do the best that they could do to stop the genocide completely, but the Hutu would not let them stop. That was the information on the Rwanda Genocide of 1994.